What is up, traders? Welcome back to another video. Inside of today's video, we're going to be going over what happened over the weekend, especially with gold and silver, and then we'll also be looking on what's going to happen this week in terms of news such as NFP, unemployment claims, and all of that. So let's get into it. Right now I have silver on my chart, and we can see that silver had this huge downtrend spiral since about Friday. Now on Friday, specific news came out that Federal Reserve Walsh was going to be the next Fed chair to replace Jerome Powell, and that made silver and gold fall in its worst day since the 1980s, as you guys can see from this Wall Street Journal article. If we go to the chart, we can see, like I just said, this horrible push. I think silver was down 36% at the time of the day, like on Friday. When I looked at the chart on silver, I was like, oh no, this is the worst day that I've seen on a currency or an asset like ever. So right now on silver, we're around $76, and if we go to gold, we're around 4,645 from where we were at almost 5,500, which is almost $1,000 worth of gold. So right now on gold, for me, we're seeing a stronger dollar because of Walsh. Because if you guys don't know, Walsh basically is a person in the past, especially during the '08 crisis, that he wanted higher interest rates during the '08 crisis. So the reason why the markets are really scared of him, especially when you look at this article, the whole entire market is scared of him because of what he's done and what his decisions were inside of the past when it comes to raising interest rates. Interest rates are important because higher interest rates usually lead to a stronger dollar, and lower interest rates usually lead to stocks being higher, gold being higher. This whole time before this news came out, there was a lot of talk around de-dollarization, basically meaning that people are moving away from assets like gold, stocks, and all of that, and moving more towards, people are moving away from the assets like the dollar and moving more towards assets like gold, silver, stocks. So right now on gold, for me personally, gold and silver, the way I see it is, because of this news, I will be on the sideline. Now, one thing about gold and silver is that you have to be somewhat forward looking. Even though we did have this huge sell-off, we are still inside of an uptrend when we look at the technical analysis. Also, if we go to the weekly time frame, we're inside of a huge demand zone as well. So right now, I think everybody's waiting to see if there will be more news that favors gold and silver, especially this week with NFP, unemployment claims, and all of that, or if news actually starts to improve, and then we can see gold and silver kind of take its head off the pedal here. But for me personally, I'm a long-term bull on both of these assets. Even from like last year and the year before, I've been a long-term bull. So right now I'm being patient, and I'm waiting to see the news that comes out this week with unemployment claims and NFP before I make my next decision. Now, when we look at the stock market, today we actually have earnings coming out for Palantir, and that relates mostly to the NASDAQ and also the S&P, because Palantir is a really big stock that moves a lot of companies as well too. The NASDAQ has basically been in a chop mode. The Fed Walsh being nominated was also not good for the NASDAQ as well, which is why we did see somewhat of a sell-off on Friday, but it wasn't as bad as gold and silver. Now, with NASDAQ being inside of this chop, me personally, I'm still staying out of it until we get better news. With that being said, today we can see a little bit of a pump. Why? Because we actually got news today that ISM manufacturing PMI came out better than expected. Manufacturer PMI basically looks at the data of manufacturers inside of the US economy, and that coming out good means that the economy is actually improving, which is actually good for the NASDAQ, the S&P 500. Even though it's bad for gold and silver, it's better for the S&P 500 and for the NASDAQ because that means the economy is overall improving and investors would want to invest more inside of stocks. But right now, this isn't enough news for me to be able to get back inside of the Nasdaq or look at the S&P either, just because of this huge range we've been inside since the start of the year. If you guys don't know, I'm a swing trader. I use the fundamentals to kind of guide where and which assets I should be looking at, and I want to look at the assets with the most momentum. Same thing that I just said with the Nasdaq with the S&P is the same way right now. Now, I did have high hopes on RTY. RTY is basically it looks at all the small cap stocks inside of the overall economy. Now, RTY has been on a bullish uptrend because there was this talk of sector rotations, rotating out of stocks like the Nasdaq with AI and high valuations into stocks like smaller cap stocks, smaller companies that may not be as big but have a high potential. With that, we saw a huge push, but now we've kind of like pulled back, especially after that news on Friday. But if we do start to see a little bit more bullishness, and I do see a setup, it will be very nice to get into. I did have this setup on the daily, but we did break through it, which was something. We also had this setup here on the daily as well. The only thing with this setup is that it's a good setup, but it's just a little bit, we've broken too much structure down for me. Let me look it up. Let me look up the Russell. Yeah, I don't know. We've broken too much structure for me downwards. I don't really like the way it looks. We'd have to do a little bit more. On the weekly, it does look clean though. If we had tapped into this weekly demand zone here, that would have given me a little bit more confidence. But right now, I'm gonna stay on the sidelines of this trade and look more towards gold, see if gold has a rebound, and then especially Nasdaq if we start breaking out this range. Now, the last thing that I do want to look at is Bitcoin. Bitcoin has been in a very bad downward trend since the start of the year, and you know, right now there's not really a lot of talk about Bitcoin because of, you know, its downward spiral since the start of the year. But especially with Walsh coming back, it's not really favorable towards crypto. Me personally, I would be looking for sells on Bitcoin if we do get a nice pullback. I know that does sound crazy, but with the fundamentals right now and us not really, you know, moving towards crypto right now, I think it would present a pretty good opportunity for sales. Now, long term, I am very bullish on Bitcoin, even though we are all the way down at where we basically were at to start 2025. We are kind of close to where we started at, you know, back in 2025, erasing all those gains. Crypto is still, you know, a good asset to have long term. Look at stocks like, when we look at something like XRP as well, it's like the same thing. XRP has been a little bit better, but we have erased a lot of our gains. A lot of the hype has died down a little bit, but that doesn't mean that it's over, because one piece of news can come out and it can shift everything. So staying long. Let me look at Ethereum too. Look at Ethereum, basically the same thing. Yeah, let me zoom in if it has a clean setup. It doesn't. Yeah, but it's still worth looking at. I'm gonna be having my eyes open on it. So yeah, we'll see what happens. This week is gonna be very interesting, especially with the NFP report. So I'm gonna be keeping you guys updated on what I end up getting into. Make sure to like this video. And one more thing, if you guys want a free newsletter to be able to do your own stock market research, get really good stock picks, click the link down in the description to my free newsletter, Earnings Alpha. And yeah, if you guys like this video, I'll see you guys next time.